Yeah. And if there's one thing I realized, especially about my first year, like working a full-time job as opposed to just being in class, is, kind of the adjustment and the expectation. I mean, sometimes you're under more stress than you even realize. And I know that happens, when people first start out in college or they start taking on more responsibility and more classes, just any kind of major life change. It can be more stressful than you even realize. Or like sometimes I realize like I would be super high strung and stressed at school all year, and then I would come home to visit my parents, and I would really actually relax for the first time in like a month or two, and then I would get sick because it's like your body's realizing, oh wait, here's all these things that have just been hushed and put on hold. You know, here, fight this and get over it and heal yourself. Um, and you just don't really realize that you had that much kind of built up on you. But
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I feel like yeah, that's definitely, something that can happen to where it could just build up and then all of a sudden it just blows right up basically. So but I'm glad that at least, you moving to Alabama, that helps, you out as far as, your health goes, as far as it being a little bit more as far as humidity and stuff like that, moisture and all that, at least that's been helpful at least. So I'm glad for that. But as far as me with inhaler as well, I do have like a rescue one as well, just in case. I don't have to use it as much. Sometimes I'll have to use it during like the cold weather because as much as I enjoy like having the heat on, so it does affect me. Sometimes like if I have the heater on and I go to sleep, and then sometimes I'll wake up and I'm like heavy breathing. So I'll still have a struggle every now and then, but for the most part, throughout most of the year, I feel pretty good as far as my asthma to where it's do I can live life without my inhaler.
I always just have mine in my pocket anyways, just in case. Um, just because I mean, and what really sucks is when I've had actual asthma attacks, though, is that even the inhaler doesn't usually do a good enough job. Like I'll have to bust out the actual nebulizer, the machine that you have to hook up and get the inhalation solution, and
Oh yeah.
it's super loud usually. Well, I guess the newer ones aren't as loud, but you have to get all set up, and then you have to like sit there and breathe slowly for it to get in, and because it's just when you get these infections in your lungs, it's just so fast, and you just kind of can't do anything. Um, but the inhaler might be good like if I'm out on the go and I need something to calm me down right then, but even then, like it won't really be real relief. Um, and of course, the trade-off for these things is that while it might help you clear your lungs, is it does actually elevate your heart rate, so that's like you just feel anxious too. Um, but do you think that of the health issues you experienced, I mean, other than the thing that obviously you guys found that was making you lose weight, I mean, you know, you have the asthma as a backup or rescue or whatever, but like, do you feel like any of these things have like negatively impacted you or prohibited you from being able to, pursue fitness or pursue a good body weight or anything? Have they gotten in the way of your dietary choices even?
Yeah, so I could say, yeah, a couple of things have kind of held me back just a little bit. Like even with asthma, when I started trying to lose weight in 2020, and it would get to where like I may overdo it on like the treadmill because that was like my go-to at the time, and like I would definitely have to have my inhaler handy. And sometimes, like you were even saying, sometimes the inhaler is not even enough to where you just start like hyperventilating. You start just having this really short breathing, short breaths for sure. So that was one big thing for me. And then as far as like, I haven't been diagnosed as lactose intolerant, but I'm almost self-diagnosing myself because I have a bad reaction every time when I eat dairy, even though it's really good, but I still put myself through that misery, I guess, because cheese is too good, but it doesn't do good for my body. So I do feel like that has kind of affected me as well in ways. So I guess I've had some things that have, I guess, set me back a little bit, but it hasn't fully, I guess, hindered it. I guess it has just partially been like a little bump on the road, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I mean, uh, uh, I had something I was thinking about with that. I mean, um, yeah, I mean, because asthma can really be a major detractor when it comes to trying to be physical and when you're trying to build up kind of that endurance. But I mean, it is something you definitely do have to kind of build up and just get used to being routinely active, and that can be really, really hard. But um, like I guess one of the things for me, like I was saying, like it was hard for me to say I want to ingest X amount of food or even the right kind of food because like I couldn't even eat at all for sure. Lactose though, interesting thing about that. Um, it's kind of one of those misnomers. At least from what I've found out, lactose and dairy products in general, as well as gluten. People say, "Oh, I'm lactose intolerant. Oh, I'm gluten intolerant. I have celiac disease." Those things are actually just really difficult for people with any kind of inflammatory. Again, it comes back to inflammation. With any kind of inflammatory issue to deal with, because your body has to try extra hard to digest things that, you know, it shouldn't have to as much. Not so much in the case of gluten, but gluten is hard on the digestive system as well. It, it's one of those complex kind of things that your body has to spend more time breaking it down. You kind of puff up more whenever you eat that kind of a very carby, filling food. With lactose, humans are the only animal that drinks milk of another animal. Like we're kind of just weird like that. I found I was really surprised because I'm sure you remember, but growing up, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, you there was like this big like push for everybody to be drinking milk all the time, every day, always. And if you didn't, you would turn into like a Jello person and get kidnapped at the mall. Um, it was like a big thing.
Yes.
Um, but like I, lo- I mean, I loved milk. I really did love milk growing up. I don't know how I drank so much of it because now I can't do that nearly as much anymore. But like I had milk with my cereal like every day, and the cereal was basically just sugar. So it was like sugar and milk like every morning for breakfast. Somehow that sustained me for several years. But lactose, I mean, I was thinking when I first heard of like lactose-free milk, like Lactaid, like I heard so much propaganda about it, like, oh, it's synthetic milk, it's not real milk, it got lumped in with all the other stuff, like almond milk and one of the ones I've actually tried, which is actually really good, which again, it kind of comes into the whole like FDA classification thing, like is it really milk if it's almond milk? If is it really milk if it's like I tried was cashew milk. That was another good one. Um, some people would argue no or yes. FDA still says yes officially, but that's beside the point. But lactate in particular is not, I mean, it's still 100% fully real milk. It's just they put this enzyme in there called lactase, which eats the lactose and produces sugar as a precipitate. So basically, it's the only kind of milk that we really should be drinking is lactate, and that is because there is no lactose in it. And instead, we get this nice, it's sweeter milk. It's nice, a little bit sugary, a little bit extra sugar content, but that's it. It takes up the one bad thing that we have trouble digesting. And so I highly recommend that if you do have issues with milk, to try uh, Lactaid. And even if you don't, like, even if you're just eating some other milk product that's just, made with like normal whole milk or something like that, they also do sell tablets that you can take before you eat something you're gonna have lactose in it. Um, they're just like Lactaid tablets, and they help, um, especially with like if you're gonna like eat ice cream or something. Um, but So yeah, there's those things, and then there's similar, like I said, like with gluten, it's the same thing. Like they did eventually double back on what they said to me about having celiac because they're like, oh, actually your results were inconclusive. So basically, I dodged gluten for like half a year for no reason. Which, by the way, I think it's gotten better in the last 7 years since I tried that, but trying to be gluten free was like super depressing because like their their excuse of bread was just bad because you need the gluten fibers to hold the bread together and it wouldn't. So like it's just like you're trying to eat a sandwich and it just falls apart and it didn't taste good and you had to keep it in the freezer. It was just bad. It was a bad experience. So I actually ended up losing weight around then too. Was another time. It wasn't because of my diet being gluten free. It was because I just stopped eating. So that was a really bad decision as well. But you know, that was a really bad semester in college anyways. So it was like whatever. Um, but yeah, like it, there's a lot of foods that are just harder to digest. A lot of your more complex carbs, your heavy starches, gluten being one of those, and lactose for the vast majority of people. I think everyone is lactose intolerant to some degree. It's just some people are more sensitive than others, and same thing with gluten. Um, you know, we're just not naturally meant to rely this heavily on grains, and we're not naturally meant to rely on other animals' milk. We're just not. So, how we ended up doing that is it's weird. That actually I watched a thing about it the other day. It was like the history of cheese and milk. It's like, wow, there's a whole story there. But anyway, it's weird, and there are some foods that are just harder to digest, and you have to be careful. It's the same thing with like if you go more in the other direction. A lot of your red meats, you really want to limit that to not having that more than like once or twice a week if you can. Um, like pork in particular has always been the meat that I've been, like you have to cook it just right, and it takes your body more effort to digest pork than it does, say, something like chicken, a leaner meat. Um, or like even the leaner cuts of beef and stuff too. Uh, and if you want typically the leanest meat is going to be more like your fish. You're going to get a lot of your good cholesterol from their fish oils or whatever. Of course, that's bad for me because I used to be really allergic to salmon, which I think was part of what contributed to my whole episode back in the day. But I apparently grew out of that. I actually went and got tested. It was part of my like journey in the beginning of 2021 of finding out what is wrong with me. I need to get this fixed. I went to um I went to a what's it called, an allergist, and got tested full panel for everything. They're like, you don't have any food allergies anymore for these things at least that we tested you for. I was like, wow, that's shocking because this has been like a dietary restriction my whole life. Um, and actually, that was a funny thing because when I was 8, apparently my things that I was allergic to not only salmon but also soy and corn. And again, soy and corn are in everything, and salmon at the time was my favorite thing. So that could have been the reason that I was really, really sick all the time, was because everything in the modern world that was being made and processed as food, I was something I was allergic to. But anyway, So I did the allergy test. I tried doing physical therapy to alleviate my uh, weird digestive habits, or trying to get regular, and that actually worked, but it worked too well and it actually caused more issues later. But you know, I tried a bunch of things before I finally found a doctor that helped me. But that's getting back on the sickness thing. But bottom line, you know, um, meats, avoid red meats too much, avoid too much gluten, and if you're really extra sensitive to dairy, definitely check out lactate. It's good stuff. Highly recommend it. But anyways, so yeah, I don't know if there's anything else on that topic. I feel like we've covered everything.
Yeah, I think we definitely covered a lot of things, and I think that was actually like a good way to kind of, close this topic because I think just even giving advice in that area, I could even take that in just because red meat and lactose is something definitely that I partake in for sure. So just even finding different ways, like even lactate, I've never tried lactate, so I would definitely be open to trying that sometime just because. I do feel like just regular whole milk is what I usually go to, and that is not good for me. I don't think it's good for me. It's because, like you were saying, digest it's hard to digest certain things like lactose and gluten and certain red meats. So definitely, it's good for me to even take that in, and I'm sure that's definitely. I hope the viewers take that into if they're having these kind of problems too. So it's definitely a good way to kind of end this topic and to take that in and try to apply it to our life and our lifestyle too.
Yeah,
So,
it's it's a lot to learn about these things, but whenever you're dealing with this kind of stuff, you kind of it feels like you have to, because you're just desperate for some kind of answers.
hmm absolutely. So yeah, that is it definitely takes a lot of commitment and a lot of sometimes it takes a lot of just trying out different ways and eventually you get to your goal or you get to finding the right thing for you. So it definitely just takes a lot of patience as well. So yeah, anyways, I think that is going to end our topic on health. I want to thank Tony for being here again. It was definitely good talking about these things and talking about our personal journeys with health. So I definitely appreciate you for being on here today.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. So if y'all enjoyed this episode, whether you are watching this on YouTube or on my Instagram page, I would definitely appreciate the support. My Instagram page is Not Your Average Joel Podcast. And then also, if you're watching us on YouTube, I definitely will appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. You're definitely welcome to comment as well. And then or if you're listening to these instead on my podcast streaming platforms that my episodes are on like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, be I if you're listening there, I definitely appreciate your support there as well. So anyways, everybody, I hope that y'all have a good rest of your day or night depending on what time of the day you're watching this, and I will see y'all on the next episode of Not Your Average Joel. Bye.
Bye.